Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. This is Funny Like a Clown Podcast, episode 81, October 13th, 2020. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth, coming at you live from Central Massachusetts as always. Funny Like a Clown Podcast is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time. There's only one G Vegas available at www.gvegas.webs.com. Go there, get it shipped right to your house. Fresh, go green, you're ready for game time. We discuss comedy, and on the phone I have one of the more successful club owners the Boston area has ever seen, Rick Jenkins. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dennis, and I'm from Buffalo, so I love that sauce.
There you go. You know about a good buffalo sauce, don't you, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I guess we got to start somewhere, so, I mean, before we get into your club owner days, take us back to the beginning. How did you start comedy? What gave you the bug to be in the business?
Oh, geez, we go all the way back to, I'm a lot older than everybody. Yeah, I go all the way back to 79.
A lot's changed since then.
I'm sorry?
A lot's changed since then, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Drinking age was 18, for one thing. So I took a date to a comedy show, and they sat us in the front row, and I just went nuts. I was just like, oh, wow, this is what I want to do. I want to be one of those guys up on stage who knows all the angles and has everything figured out and controls the room and has all the attention.
Right.
So I did that, and then started out in Buffalo. So like 1980 to 1986, there was Yuck Yucks in Buffalo. There were two clubs. If you played one, you weren't allowed to play the other.
Right. Oh, so, like most places, okay.
yeah. So you knew you were going to have to move at some point. But, with Yuck Yucks there, I was able to open for Sam Kinison and Jay Leno and
really?
a whole bunch of guys. So by the time I moved to Boston in '86, I had enough minutes under my belt that I could start in Boston right away as an MC or as a middle. So
Boston's a tough comedy scene. Yeah. So I thought Yuck Yucks, I thought that was a Canadian-owned company. So there was one in Buffalo.
Yeah, it was. Still is. It's a Canadian company. It's a chain across. But back then, the comedy boom was happening, and they were trying to make room into the U.S. So they had a club in Buffalo and one in Rochester. I think they might have tried one out in Vancouver. But all the Canadian acts started with them. So I got to work with Norm Macdonald when Norm was a middle act.
Oh, really? Well, you must have seen a lot on the way up. But you hit one of my soft spots. You mentioned you opened with Sam Kinison. He's one of my favorite comics. Well, what can you tell me about Sam? You got a memory?
You did that movie, right?
Yeah, I did the short film about him. It's about his life. Yeah. But,
he was. I opened for him, and he did a whole tour of Yuck Yucks because just after the whole crucifixion stunt he did in the parking lot there, there were a lot of clubs that wouldn't use him. And he wasn't able to work places, and Yuck Yucks took him in and gave him a bunch of work. So right after that Rodney Dangerfield special, when he blew up, he went back and did a swing for Yuck Yucks again as kind of a thank you.
Thank you. There you go. That's a good thing.
Yeah, for being back there. And Buffalo was one of the stops. So, I got to see Kinison right at his peak in front of like 150, 200 people.
Yeah.
Nice little small room.
Something to watch.
Yeah. The thing I remember most about it was, I don't think it's any secret that Sam enjoyed some illegal substances.
He liked his party.
And he liked. He tried to get some in Buffalo, so he went to the local MC who was a junkie and said, "Hey, here's $1,000. Get me some stuff." And the guy ripped him off.
Oh, gee. Yeah. So there's a chance you take if you're a junkie, I guess, right?
Yeah. The funniest part was Kinison pacing in the back kitchen going like, me? He rips off me? What the hell's wrong with him?
You don't rip off Sam Kinison, right?
Yeah.
All right, so what made you make the move from Buffalo to Boston? Just looking for a new scene, or what was the...
Yeah, well, like I said, you had, there were two clubs, so maybe if you could work both clubs and you could do the one-nighters, you might be able to squeak by a living,
Right.
So, Boston at the time, like I told my parents I was going to go look at graduate schools. And so I went to Boston, New York, and Chicago and went to the comedy teams at each of them instead of grad schools. And in New York, there were a lot of opportunities, but the shows didn't pay anything in town, so you had to make your living on the road
Right.
and make your rep in town, or get a day job and work all night. And I knew I just wasn't built for that.
Yeah, and there's
And
a lot more
Chicago-
comics in New York than there is in Boston, so it's an easier scene to find opportunity.
Chicago was all improv at the time, all sketch.
Right.
And Boston, I had some friends who had started out in Buffalo, Rich Seisler, and a few really terrific comics. And when I moved, so I could move to Boston and start making a little bit of money right away.
That's part of the game right there, sure.
Yeah, and so that's what sort of tilted it. I didn't realize how little. I moved to Boston with $86 and a place to stay for 3 weeks, figuring, I'll be making this money. I didn't realize that it takes 2 weeks to get paid.
Right.
So by the time my $86 was gone, I was like,
you were ready to get paid at that point, right?
Yeah, that was an actor in the rearview mirror. If Rich Seisler hadn't gone to bat for me at the Comedy Connection, the first night I was in town, he arranged an audition for me on an off night.
Really?
And so I was getting work, day one. So by the time that $86 was gone, the first of those paychecks were in. I don't know what would have happened without that.
You were appreciative of the help that people gave you, but I mean, speaking of help, you've helped out a lot of young comics yourself. You were on the Boston scene for a while. I mean, you were getting paid, and you decided to open up your own comedy place called the Comedy Studio. And 21 years later, it was a successful club. But what led to that decision to open your own club?
Well, basically, it was the boom had died. When Boston goes in generations, so you have that Ding Ho generation of Sweeney, Gavin, Rogerson. These guys who are just
legends.
These guys who are just absolute monsters. But because they're the headliners, that next generation coming up has trouble moving up.
Right.
So you had David Cross, Janine Garofalo, Mark Maron, Louis C.K., all these people at Catch Rising Star who couldn't become headliners because Boston already had their headliners.
Right, you're stuck at opener, right.
Yeah, but my favorite story is Dane Cook. Dane Cook gets a call and says, hey, the headliners can't follow you. They don't want you middling for them anymore. So Dane figures, that means I'm going to be a headliner? And the guy goes, no, that means I have to have you open because, I can't,
That becomes a problem. You work less, too, yeah. I mean, if you start getting more laughs than the guy ahead of you, you're going to start working. You think you'd work more, you start working less because they don't want to follow you.
Yeah, but if you're in Boston, you've got the headliners. No one's going to leave being disappointed in any of those Boston headliners.
Right.
So that's when he realized he had to move. So,
and they never retire. They stick around till the day they die because it's too fun of a thing to leave. They never retire. So.
Yeah, and remember, there's a lot of things built in from a booker's point of view. Those guys you don't have to pay hotel. You don't have to pay transportation.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They're as cheap as acts can get, and they're as good as any act you can find. So you want to keep those guys.
Yeah, the local guys, they're going to put the crowds in, and like you said, you don't have to pay the airfare, you don't have to pay the hotels, you don't have to pay everything to put them up, where a show like that, it's not as easy to make money.
Credits or whatever, they've already got a built-in audience.
All right, so you open...
then you get to the point, you've got guys like Louis starts going down to New York, Janine Garofalo moves, takes some acting lessons, David Cross moves to L.A., and I just didn't have the money or the guts, so I stayed in Boston and got a day job at the Harvard Coop bookstore.
The safe move.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and hey, it's not like I had a choice.
Yeah, right. I mean, but
no one was banging my door down saying, "Hey, we want you to headline."
Right. So, it's easier to make that move at 20. When you get a little older, it's not as easy to drop everything and move to either LA or New York, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I made that move to Boston back then, and I just didn't really have it in me to do it again.
That was your move, right.
Yeah. So, then that started working out because I was working, 40 hours a week at a bookstore for minimum wage. And a little bar, the Hong Kong, that me and Tom Brown and a bunch of comedians from Catch Rising Star used to go to after the shows. Turns out Tom was really hot for one of the waitresses there.
Okay.
So he would get all the comedians to go with him over to the bar.
Uh-huh.
So he could hang out with her. And now, 30-some years later, they're married and
Who knew at the time, right? Who knew?
Yeah, yeah. He and I started doing comedy shows up on the third floor on Sunday night. Just to be like, well, I want to keep my hand in comedy. I'll take gigs when they come along and maybe do stuff. And because I knew people, the shows were pretty good. Me and Tom were already decent acts. And people like Brian Kiley and DJ Hazard and Tony V would come by and do sets. And new comics were looking for stage time like they always are. Yeah. So it became, that Sunday night became pretty popular.
There's been a lot of other guys who have had the same dream as you to open their own comedy club, and they last 3 weeks and then fold. What do you think you did that made you so much more successful than all these other guys who tried?
I think two things. Number one is I loved it. So there wasn't a whole lot of, oh geez, now we have to deal with the landlord wanting this or we want to do that. And the other thing was that, it was very little risk. I didn't have any money to risk. Right. So early on, the comics were working for, we were charging $3 at the door, and the comics were getting a percentage of that.
Okay, so you didn't think you were a hotshot comic expecting top pay. You realized what the gig actually was and accepted it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we were doing a showcase. We were doing 7-minute sets because my thinking was, that's as long as you can ask someone to work for free.
Right.
So if I got 10 people doing 7 minutes each for free, I had a show.
And it's been a successful formula for you. It's worked 21 years later. So you started at the Hong Kong. I mean, what are some of your favorite memories of doing shows at the Hong Kong for 21 years?
Oh, well, so many. Because like I said, we got that nice reputation. Comics talk. Comics know what a good room is. They know what management treats you well. They they know all that. So people start coming by. I think one of my favorites was Brendan Small was a comic with us. Now he did a cartoon show called Home Movies that went 4 years on the Cartoon Network, and then he did Metalocalypse, which went 4 years on Adult Swim. But he got discovered at our place as a college kid because there was one night Jonathan Katz and Louis C.K. stopped in to do a set, and Jonathan Katz's assistant producer was with him and saw Brendan and called me the next day. He calls me the next day and says, hey, I loved the show last night. So I'm thinking he wants to make a show with me. he says, do you have Brendan Small's phone number?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
I hand that out to anybody who wants it, right?
Yeah. That's how Brendan got discovered, and they made a cartoon show out of that. So whenever Brendan had a guest star on the show, whether it was Louis C.K. or Emo Phillips or whoever was guest starring on his show, they would come by after taping and do a set at my place.
Well, now you mentioned you've been at it 21 years, and obviously you've had a lot of young college kids and young comics come through, but I mean, who are some of the bigger names that have gone through your club that have gone on to be huge comics?
Well, the people who started from the very beginning with us would be like Eugene Merman, Gene from Bob's Burgers, Dan Mintz, who plays Tina on Bob's Burgers. We actually have, the two of them are coming back to do an online show for us.
Really?
November 5th. So the process continues. Sam J., who just started making a whole lot of noise, she just got her own weekly show on HBO. So it's going to be like, Dennis Miller, John Oliver, and, this girl who started out with us.
Now, did Dane Cook ever come through your club, or?
You know what? No, Dane, the story with Dane was, like I said, we had just started those Sunday nights and stuff.
Right.
And I ran into Dane, and I said, hey, we started this little room if you want to come by and work on, it's nice because it's just a place where comics can work on their own stuff, no pressure or anything. And he said, quite rightly, he said, you know what, I'm getting paid, to do an hour. If I want to do new stuff, I'll stick the 10 minutes in the middle of the set I'm getting paid for.
Right.
So I said, well, yeah, I can't really argue with that.
It's good theory, sure. But, I mean, didn't Sarah Silverman start there? Or not start, but, I mean, came through your club?
Yeah, that's what she, again, Jonathan Katz, who he had that show Dr. Katz.
Right.
Which had all the comics on. He calls me one day and says, hey, I'm going to be on the Letterman show next week. Can I come in and you ask me the questions so I can practice giving the answers? So I'm like, oh, wow, that's great. And he says, oh, yeah, and a friend of mine, her mom has never seen her perform live before. So could she do a set so that her mom could come and see her? I said, yeah, sure. And it was Sarah Silverman. So Sarah played the club when, for her mom, and it happened to be a night when we had comedians go up for their first time.
Right.
We called it Sacrificing Virgins.
Oh.
And the comedian on before her was named Baratunde Thurston, and he's now huge. He's got the podcast and he's on CNN and everything. Very political comedian, an activist, but and he's black. And Sarah did that joke she has about. I tried to give my boyfriend was black. I tried to give him a compliment. I said, "You'd be a really expensive slave." And he gets all upset. And then Baratunde goes on after her and opens with, first time ever on stage, he opens with, "Sarah, you couldn't afford me." So,
we can take a joke like that at our age. Now comedy's taking a turn where everything's offensive. It's tough to even do it anymore. Even Bill Burr was on Saturday Night Live this weekend, and he's catching some heat for being risky. So what's your opinion on being risky?
Yeah, I saw that set. I don't know what you think. For me, hey, that's Bill. Anytime you see Bill,
that's what he does.
That's the set he does.
Not everybody was expecting it, though. You know, if you tuned in to see Bill Burr, you expected it. If you were just tuning in Saturday Night Live because you like comedy, then... But I don't know who doesn't know Bill Burr at this point, but I guess the kids liked it. Yeah. Their parents not so much, possibly, but...
Well, there's also the fact that that's not really Bill's strong suit, going up and doing like a tight 5, a tight 7.
Right.
So yeah, if you don't know him, you might not know him. If your comedy is, the late night shows and stuff, he's on Conan some, but
right.
He doesn't really fit in well to.
That's not his mecca, but
shows.
Well, you mentioned the late night shows, and years ago when I started out comedy, I did come up to your room and I tried it out. You treated me very fairly. I thank you for that right off the bat. But
yeah.
I know one of the things you mentioned to the comics when you were there, that your club is a club that wants to get comics ready for television, where it's not a, it's not a blue collar club where So, what do you do to get kids ready for TV? And one of the big rumors, and you can put an end to this rumor whether it's true or not, if you want to appear on Conan O'Brien, that you're the guy's club to go do to get it done. Is that true, or?
To some extent, not as much anymore.
Okay.
It used to be, because Brian Kiley, who's been writing Conan's monologues since the beginning, he was splitting his time. He was living up in Boston and writing for Conan down in New York. So he would come up every weekend, practice his stuff at my club, and then go down to Conan's office and say, "Hey, I saw this person up there that's really good." So we had every week, we had somebody with Conan's ear hearing about what was up here.
What was going on.
So, so we still got, and same with Fallon, we know people who are on the staff.
So what's the difference between getting a comic ready for TV and getting a comic ready for, to be a road comic? What would you consider the difference between getting the two ready?
I think the difference is getting the audience's attention and what are you going to do with it. When you're on the road, you've got to get the audience's attention. Everyone is they're eating, they're looking at the TV, they're talking, and they don't know who you are. They expect a comedian.
Right.
So the closer you are to what they think a comedian is, the better you're going to do. So you got to get their attention. You got to let them know what's happening and get them on your side. Whereas for television, you've already got their attention. Now you've got to give them something different, something that they're not going to get somewhere else.
Right.
So in some ways, playing a club means, being a comedian, and being on television means being that guy. There's only one Bill Burr.
Because he's giving you something different. They don't want to hear about your trip to the donut shop that's been done 1,000 times. They're looking for something different, right, on TV?
Yeah. They want to see, Burr's a bad example because he plays both really well.
Right.
But, Eugene Merman, any of these people that, Norm Macdonald. Well, you think, Stephen Wright is one of the old Dig Ho guys.
Right.
And he was working all over New England as a middle because, you put Stephen Wright in a bar where nobody knows who he is or what he's doing.
You don't have full attention, right?
Yeah. Another guy who started out with us was Joe Wong. He got discovered at our place, got on Letterman. Letterman loved him, gave him a sitcom deal. He got on Ellen. Through that, he got on the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Through that, the people in China saw him and gave him his own TV show. So he's had his own 8 o'clock television show for the past 8 years.
Yeah, he was traveling for a while, doing like nationwide tours, I remember.
Yeah. So he's probably the biggest star, to come out of certainly my place, maybe in the country, because there's a billion people who have him on television every day at 8 o'clock.
And Joe worked clean too. And these kids see Bill Burr on Saturday Night Live, and they all want to be dirty like Bill Burr. And you know as well as I do, if you work clean, you work a lot more in this business. So, do you encourage the comics in your club to work clean, or do you put up with some blue material, or what's it like when you go up to the comedy studio?
Yeah, I mean, I put up with it. Like I said, a lot of comics, Shane Moss, Louis, they're as dirty as you get.
Right.
I think the difference is when you start out, you are a lot like whoever you like. If you're a big Burr fan or a big Kinison fan, you're going to be doing that guy.
Yeah.
And it takes you a while to learn the basics of comedy and everything so that you start doing you.
Well, I remember Shane Moss, you mentioned. Wasn't he on Last Comic Standing? And he almost threw the crowd and the judges into shock with what he was doing. It was like...
Oh, yeah.
I was watching it, and I'm like, oh, they don't get it, man. They don't get it.
Yeah, well, and he did Conan, and, he was almost like Carlin or Pryor in that he was a really good joke writer, really good comedian, got some success, and started saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to go my own route, and now he's got the longer hair, and he's touring, doing shows about hallucinogenics.
Right. He's one of
those dealing a lot with the scientists and all that sort of stuff and doing his own thing.
All right. So you've run for 21 years the comedy studio at the Hong Kong and Cambridge. Things are going well. You've worked hard. You beat out a lot of other guys that tried to open clubs that weren't successful, and you were. And then all of a sudden you made the move over to Somerville. What prompted that move, and how's it gone for you?
Well, hey, COVID sort of puts the puts the little ... after anything.
Put the stop on everyone there, did?
Yeah. So it got, the Hong Kong, we got to that point where we were renting the space, so we could only fit 75 people, and we could only do one show a night. We only had the room from 7 o'clock until 10 o'clock.
Right.
So it was like, we were kind of bumping up against that. And then the landlord decided to raise the rent.
That'll do it.
Yeah, and so I was like, well, unless we charge $40 a ticket, we're not even going to be able to tread water.
Right.
So we realized we had to leave. And
well, I mean, you left before the COVID hit. I mean, you had to be worried. Are my patrons going to follow me over? I mean, the comics are always looking for stage time, but how many are going to follow me? I mean, how did the move go before COVID hit for you?
Yeah, pretty well, because we went to 100 seats. And we were able to do 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. And, of course, my heart is in, with the new comic. So we were able to do an open mic where we would do 60 to 70 comedians on a Tuesday night.
Right.
So to have that space ourselves where, we could have someone come in and record.
Did your patrons follow you over there? A lot of your regular crowd, did they follow you?
Yeah. It's just, like I said, if we had a regular crowd of, say 40 people.
Yeah.
Of the 75, those 40 follow you. Now they're only 40 of 100.
Okay.
So everybody followed us. It's just we also built a lot more people just by virtue of being bigger.
Right. You opened up the doors.
And being able to call in some of those names. Call in some of those favors. Hey, hey, Mike Kaplan. You only got into comedy because we were there. Or Colin Yost.
Now we need you to be there for us. Right?
Yeah, because that was the other thing we had at Harvard, at Hong Kong, that we don't have here, is we were right across the street from Harvard. So people like B.J. Novak and Colin Yost and Dan Mintz, they were Harvard kids who would just walk across the street and do a set.
Right, well, if you're out in the suburbs, you're probably getting people in their 50s and 60s that are going to a comedy show, where if you're up there in the big city, I mean, probably the young kids are mostly your crowd, right?
Yeah,
the college
exactly.
kids and stuff, right?
So that was definitely something, we're always working with. I mean, we're not in the suburbs, we're in Somerville, so it's still, it's a couple blocks away, it's still hipster world, but, that's why you've never seen any of the big chains come into Boston, because the big chains all build their audiences around that suburban couple, and most of them look at needing one parking spot for every 2 seats they have.
Right.
And you are not going to, if you want 300 seats, you're not going to find any place that's got 150 parking spaces.
Up in Boston, right?
Yeah.
Space is too tight, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why all the big chains have never come into Boston. It's like, well, they can't compete with the talent because they got to bring in their talent,
Right.
and they can't build the room that they want to get their audience to come in.
Now, with the young college kids, it's probably easier to do blue material in your room because they're accepting of it. Where if you come out, I mean, I'm in Central Mass, I'm in the suburbs here. I do successful shows, but it's mostly people in their 50s and 60s. I bring a young kid and he starts going off like Bill Burr. My crowd ain't coming anymore, so it's not as easy for me. So.
Yeah. Well, we had give you an idea of the political correctness of where Joe Rogan is an old friend. I started out with Joe, and he came in and did a set, and he got heckled because he was using the F word.
Really?
Well, for about gays.
Oh well, that'll do it.
And there was someone who was gay in the audience and saying, "Hey, that's outdated. That's
triggering me."
That's
right.
old. Yeah, that's old school. You're on the wrong side of history, which is a good point, but
he's still Joe Rogan. Yeah, you kind of. He is who he is, right?
Yeah. So you also get Seinfeld and Chris Rock saying they don't want to play colleges because of the young kids. I don't think it's the material so much as who it's coming from. I mean, you got an audience that's 50 or 60. They do not mind hearing a comic my age or your age talking about their prostate exam or having a big tube shoved up their ass.
Stay true to who you are.
It's someone their age that know it. I think
they can relate to it.
College kids. Yeah, same thing with college kids. If you're in college, you want to hear about jerking off and getting high.
Right.
And the last thing you want is someone your parents' age talking about jerking off and getting high.
You can't relate to that. You want to stick to what you can relate. Well, they call that reading your audience before you go in. Know what material you're going to do based on your audience, right?
Yeah, exactly. Same material. Same material from different audiences work different ways. I mean, you've been in the restaurant business forever. If you know everyone in the audience goes to restaurants or knows food or whatever. I mean, you pitched a show to the Food Network. That was very different than the show you would pitch to ESPN or NBC.
We tried, yeah. They told us, like, the average person, if they want to watch comedy, they go to Comedy Central. They're not tuning into the Food Work to watch comedy. That was kind of, they didn't think it was appealing to their crowd, where I thought it was different to me. It was like, well, it's different. A lot of people have thought of it, but I'm doing it. But, it was a fun run. It was fun.
And that's why nobody knows what they want until they see it.
Yeah, you never know what's going to take off. All right, so you were at the Hong Kong and Cambridge for years. You moved over to Somerville. You were even, sounds like, more successful over there because you opened up your audience. And then, boom, as you mentioned, COVID hits. What's been the state of comedy for you since that hit?
You just keep the biggest problem with COVID is that you don't know when it's going to end. You don't know how things are going to change. Every day the governor comes out and says, well, you can do this, you can't do that.
Right.
So you're changing your plans every day. What we decided to do was we kept our staff, and we just used them to set up an online network. So now we're doing 8 shows a week online.
Okay. So you're not doing any live shows at the club at this point. You can't work around the rules.
We can't. We can't. And in fact, Somerville is behind the rest of the state. We can't even do outdoor shows. Mike Birbiglia called us and said, "Hey, I'll do something in your courtyard to help you out." And the city said, "No, you can't.
Really?
We're not going to allow entertainment gatherings."
So that's a city law, because the state would allow that, because I know some of the places were doing that in the parking lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
so your hands are really tied.
Yeah, Mike Clark is doing a good job up at Giggles, where they set up a tent in the
under the big top. Yeah.
So they're technically outside.
Okay. So, I know the laws have changed somewhat. You could have, I think it was 25 people. I know in the restaurant I can have 25 people in, but at 25 guests, you're not getting much laughs, you're not getting much money, right?
Right, and there's also the question of, how much space do you have? Because those 25 have to be distanced.
Exactly, yeah.
So if they're 6 feet apart, that means you need, a couple hundred square feet just for the audience. And then the question is, do you count the staff?
Right.
If you got 2 or 3 waitresses, a bartender, and yourself, and 4 comics, you're pretty close to your limit.
Yeah, you're down to just your staff. You're down to about the limit already before you get any guests in. So, You can't make any money, and in comedy, you want people right on top of you. The laughter carries, and if they're 6 feet apart, there's not much laughter to carry.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what these shows, in drive-ins and parks. In New York, there's a lot of shows in parks and on rooftops.
Have you done any of those where the people sit in their car and like the new laughter is they beep their horn if they like your joke? Have you done any of those? Or?
Yeah, no, I haven't done any of them. From every comic I hear, they're better than you would think.
Really?
The comics are like, boy, it just feels good to be out there on stage and, in front of people.
You miss it, that's for sure.
If someone honks their horn, you don't know if they're heckling you or applauding you.
One or the other, right? Yeah. All right. I mean, in your opinion, what do you see the future? Well, what's it going to be? Like you said, we don't know when it's going to be over. So, I mean, do you think online's going to be the new thing for comedy, or?
I think we're always going to have some sort of online presence. I've been doing the shows, the Zoom shows. For me, it's like the cross between an in-person show and a television show that I always wanted. So Joe Wong called us from China and did a set.
Really?
So we can get comics from all over. We've got audience from China, from Vancouver, from whatever.
Right, yeah.
So I think that's going to be around. But yeah, the live shows I think are going to slowly get back to where they were. It's not going to be a switch. It's not going to be like, hey, there's
back
now
to normal, right?
People fit in again. It's probably going to be okay. You can do half capacity, with the comic, 12 feet away from the audience, or
right.
Slowly move that sort of thing.
So what kind of crowds are you getting online? Are you getting good crowds online? I mean, or is it not what it used to be?
Yeah, we're doing decent. We're not to the point yet where we're breaking even, because like I said, we have our staff. I'm trying to keep the staff on payroll.
Right.
You don't want to let people go during the pandemic.
Yeah, you're gonna need them when you come back. Who knows when that is? But yeah, you got to take care of your staff. But
yeah. So we're building that, and and you wait. You hope the government comes up with another stimulus. That payroll protection plan is what was able to keep us open in the first place.
Right.
I belong to a group called NEVA, which is the National Independent Venues. So it's all the small rock clubs and and comedy clubs and stuff. And they're lobbying Congress, and they're going to have Reggie Watts is going to host a big weekend-long benefit for us online, and so it's a lot of these little small things. 90% of these small independent venues are not going to reopen.
Oh yeah, a lot are going to go out. Oh, definitely, a lot of comedy clubs aren't going to come back from this. No.
Yeah, comedy and those small rock clubs. The rock,
right.
40, 50. When you got the Iron Horse out there, those places
are. Like the Foxwoods and Mohegans, they're not going to be hurt by this. A little guy like you and me, this is not easy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And again, the Mohegans, they don't spend their money on on comedy. They make it on the gambling.
Right.
So there's gonna be a little less money in it.
Everybody's taking a pay cut if you want to perform, because you can't make any money. You can't have big crowds anymore. So if you want to perform, it's less money, and if you don't, it's sit home and do nothing.
Yeah, and that's the thing I found interesting is like the people who were open micers when this started are online. They're going into parks. They're doing backyard shows. It's
they're getting creative.
The headliners are doing fine because they got their money. Patton Oswalt's not going to have a problem,
Right.
And the open micers, they already had day jobs or something. It's all us middle acts that have to struggle a little bit. All those acts that were counted on this $300 a week.
So I mean, the loan you got or whatever you did there, you mentioned, helping out the small business guys like you. Is that how you paid the rent to keep a place open until you get back, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky in that I got a great deal with the landlord, which at the time I thought sucked. Was I said, okay, I'll give you the bar, I'll take the room and not pay any rent. So I only made my money on the tickets.
Right. Well, a lot of places like that.
Yeah, now that's a great deal because I don't have any rent.
That worked out for you. There you go, right?
Yeah. So I mean, the landlord's not happy, because he's just sitting there on an empty space and not serving any drinks.
Well, yeah. Most people realize what's going on. The landlord sees what's happening. He's not blind to it, so.
Yeah. And it puts me in the position when this is all over. How many places are going to be open looking for something to do?
Oh, yeah, I mean, well, even when they do say you come back, just because they say you come back, people may still be sketchy about coming out. I mean, just because they tell you can do it, don't mean they're going to want to do it,
Yeah, when this first started, we sent out a thing to all of us. Yeah, and I encourage you, sure I have your email address. I send out a weekly newsletter with what's happening in the club and on the scene. And we sent out like a survey, basically, and said, hey, if we can do shows, would you come to them?
Right.
And most people said, yeah, I would come to see an outdoor show. I don't think I'd come to see an indoor show.
They're not ready for that yet, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's tough for you because you can't do outdoor shows.
Even if you can do a show, and should you?
Yeah, that's the question. Just because you can, don't mean you should, right? I mean,
yeah, and are you risking your fans' health?
Yeah, you're being responsible, right? Yeah. Just so the listeners know.
D.L. Hughley in, I think it was Zanies in Nashville, goes on stage, passes out, and it turns out he had COVID. And all of a sudden, everyone who was at the show had to get tested.
They're at risk all of a sudden. Yeah, it's a dangerous thing. So if people wanted to tune in your online thing for the listeners, tell them how would they go about tuning in the Comedy Studio online.
You can just find all of our stuff through our website, thecomedystudio.com. Okay. And the shows during the week are all free. Kathy Ferris, and we have a different show every night. And then the weekend shows I host with like 5 different acts doing 10 minutes each from all over the country.
Okay, so it's thecomedystudio.com is what it is?
Yeah.
And can they sign up there to get on your email list if they went to that website?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Or email me directly. It's just rick.jenkins@thecomedystudio.com.
Okay. So you're sending out emails, you're letting the people know, this is what's going on with comedy, this is what we're doing, this is what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you charge to get on these online shows, or?
Yeah, just send anything to booking@thecomedystudio.com.
I mean, now, are you able to charge as much for tickets to see the online show as at your club, or are you taking less money?
Yeah, not as much. We're done. You're always playing around with it, but right now what we're doing is Friday, Saturday, Sunday shows. We're doing $10 a ticket.
Okay.
And a place to tip. All the tips go to the comics, and the comics get, I think, like half. The comics get a percentage of the tickets and all of the tips.
Okay, so that's a good way.
So right now we're able to pay comics. We're able to pay staff. How long we're going to be able to do that is just a question of how many people actually tune in and kick in their $10.
Yeah, it's a tougher scene on the internet because anybody can be on the internet. Where you mentioned the big clubs ain't coming into Boston because they can't make it work. Where anybody can be on, so it's getting a little saturated where everybody's doing it. Yeah,
exactly. Because you're competing with everything. We're doing our shows live, figuring that way no one can steal the comics material. You have to make an appointment for it. But on the other hand, anyone can be watching anything in the world at 8 o'clock on a Saturday.
Well, that's why I lucked out with the podcast. I was doing this a long time before the COVID hit, so I hit it before everybody was doing it, so I was able to stick around. But I'm a
fan. I've been watching that episode of Joey was really great.
Yeah, I found out 5% of my listener base is in Israel, and I'm just saying, who is listening to me in Israel? Thank you to my Israel listeners. I do appreciate it anyway. All right.
Well, boy, Israel, interesting. Another guy who started out with us, Alex Edelman, when he did his year in Israel, his Jewish birthright year, he started a comedy club in Jerusalem.
Really?
Yeah, because he was such a comedy fan, so he found a little basement and started doing a comedy show in Israel, and would call me from Israel saying, "Hey, I just had an Arab heckle a Jew. How do I handle it?" I'm like, I don't know.
Good question, right? Yeah. So was it successful? Yeah.
Yeah, that's way past my pay grade.
Well, I saw a thing that Gabriel Iglesias, he got paid big money to go over to the Middle East, and he was scared about doing it. He's like, his agent called him. He's like, give him a ridiculous number. Well, they ended up paying him to get over there, and they said that's how they're bringing pieces through comedy over there. That it's becoming a big thing, comedy over there.
Yeah, I know a lot of them. Abu Dhabi, Dwayne Perkins just started out with us, plays out there a lot. A lot of comics. Yeah, I mean, they don't like to make a big deal of it because, then you get, you're playing for the Arabs, and, does that affect the Jewish thing, and, the government is oppressive or whatever, and, you open a big can of worms. But, there's work there. What I loved about Joey was, I didn't realize he was we're talking about, what's the Joey Delavay. He was the comic who was headlining Johnson & Wales when Dan Kino was middling. Right. Johnson & Wales was a college. Dan Kino was a middle act, but just crushing it. And one night at Johnson & Wales college gig, he C.J. Thibodeau, another comic from Rhode Island, slips in, watches the show, and finds Dan Keene doing all the Boston Act material. So that's how.
Ooh.
That's a legendary story of
That's a big no-no in comedy.
That comic showed up at Kevin Knox's open mic the following Monday, and every headliner in Boston was waiting for him.
Didn't go well, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, just like Goodfellas or Ron Taylor.
It's been going on in comedy for years. I mean, rumor has it allegedly Robin Williams got his ass kicked a few times at the Comedy Store for stealing jokes, so it's not unheard of. But,
oh yeah.
It's still a shitty thing to do, though. It really is. Yeah. All right. Well.
Yeah. And in Robin's defense, I mean, a lot of guys work like that they're working so fast off the top of their head. That it's like, someone tells you, hey, stretch right now, do 10 minutes right now, and you've already done all your material, you're going to think of a joke that, somebody told you at a bar.
Yeah, right. Well, I heard he'd take a joke that wasn't so funny, take the premise, and he'd make it hilarious. He'd actually improve on the joke, Like, well, that ain't that funny, but I can make it funny,
Yeah. And the other thing with him was he actually lost a lawsuit. Well, he settled a lawsuit because Reality What a Concept was a joke of another comic's.
Okay.
And they were able to show that this comic had been doing that line for a long time.
Right.
And Robin named his album it. So there was a while there where you could just call Robin's office and say, I think he did my joke, and they go, oh, well, here's a couple $100.
So how did the lawsuit go?
I think they ended up settling for $20,000 or something, which doesn't matter. I mean, it was a million-selling album.
Right.
But and that's the thing. The stealing, it ends up hurting you because you're doing it in somebody else's timing and someone else's material, and you don't develop your own thing.
Right.
So you're gonna be able to kill in a road room where you're making $75, but why
risk
would
it,
anyone on TV get you to do Jerry Seinfeld's material when they can get Jerry Seinfeld?
Jerry Seinfeld, right? Okay. All right. So here's one of the big questions I did want to ask you when I got you on here, because I mean I book shows out in Central Mass, and like I said, you've been successful. I've been successful out here, and if you're successful, you do it something to be proud of. But you work with a lot of the young college kids. What's the most rewarding thing that you find helping out the next generation of comics, where you're dealing with the young kids? What's the most rewarding thing for you?
Well, being there when they break, like I said, Sam J just got a job writing on SNL, and then got a job, got her HBO or a Netflix special, and now she's got an HBO show. That first time or two that they're doing national TV is really great, but I can't take any credit for it. The way I always think of it is I have the keys to the gym. Whoever shows up and works the hardest is going to be the strongest.
Right. That's a good one.
I'm not lifting any weights for them. I'm not designing workout routines. I'm just there to open the door and say, hey, here's a stage, here's an audience. You make of it what you can.
You work as hard as you want. It's up to you, right?
Yeah, because I played all those Western Mass rooms, from 86 to 92.
Yeah.
Jay's in Pittsfield, and a couple times hitting that second exit. If you miss that exit to Pittsfield, you're in Albany.
You're in trouble. But I've told that to a lot of young comics. Like, what do you do to be successful? It's like, it's not that I'm funnier than everybody. I outwork everybody. I'm just sitting by the phone. I'm not making stuff happen. You got to outwork people.
Yeah. I really believe, and I think it's threefold. Comedy anyway. Well, life is, a third is talent, a third is luck, and a third is hard work. And you know what? You only got control over one of those.
Right.
How hard you're working is the only thing you can control. How much talent you've been born with, and who happens to be where, when. But yeah, if you do 100 gigs, you've got a much better shot of getting something than somebody who does 3.
Well, I've always said there's 3 sides of comedy. There's the business side, the political side, and the being funny side. And you think the being funny would be first, and it's probably dead last, in my opinion. I mean, you got to pay your dues. It's a lot of who you know. It's a lot of opportunities, but you got to work hard no matter what you do, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. But I think that the being funny is the most important part. The difference is there's a big scale of being funny, anywhere from 1 to 10. Whereas with the business and the political, you can get by just on the basics.
Right.
As long as you're paying your bills, as long as you can afford, like the Louis and those guys, Marin, they would drive down to New York on a Monday Sunday night, probably not get on stage, and drive back. But they were there. They were learning from Attell. They were learning from these acts.
Right.
They were learning comedy. They were showing their face at the club. They'd eventually get in. Whereas I stayed up here and said, no, I'm not going to spend the money driving all the way down to New York and back and maybe not get on stage. I'll sit at the Comedy Connection and watch their open mic.
Right.
So I ended up learning how an open mic was run. I ended up learning how a room was run. They ended up learning how to run a career. So you make those choices all the time without realizing it.
Yeah, it's a win-win. All right, so I asked that question to lead into this question. Now, I book a lot of shows out here in Central Mass, and I get a lot of these young comics. They think I'm cutting them a break, and I'm getting them some stage time so they can learn their craft and get better. And instead of appreciating it, they want to tell you how to run your club. They want to tell you how to do comedy, and they're just getting started out, and you've been at it a while. So what is the most frustrating part about dealing with the young comics to you?
Well, the business side, dealing with the owners is probably much more difficult. It's like, when they're saying, like, oh, this is a check, don't cash it for 2 weeks, and you got the comic saying, hey, I need my money tonight because I got rent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe because I've been around so long, when comics have a problem with me, rarely do they let me know.
They've never told you, hey, this is what you should be doing with your club, and you're like, then you're kind of like, well, you're hitting open mics. Who are you to tell me what to do? I've been successful 21 years,
Yeah, I get that, but I see a lot of it as a suggestion, and I stay way open to it because if you're a college kid telling me what you think the show should be like, hey, that's kind of what your friends want the show to be like, and I want to get your friends in here.
Right.
So when they say, oh, you should do, you should go online or whatever, I take it, I take it that way from everybody. Everyone, it's just a suggestion. You only short yourself if you don't take the suggestion.
Try to keep an open
And
mind,
go
right?
like, you know what? Yeah, you're wrong. I've been doing a show here. I've been doing a show here forever. I mean, one thing that keeps coming up is people are always saying, hey, you should do headliners.
Right.
You should bring in a headliner. You pay a headliner a certain amount, and they bring in a certain amount of audience, and the place is filled and everything. Every time someone suggests it, I think it over. But right now, the format I've been using for the last 20 years, I kind of like. And the other reason I like it is because I'm still able to book myself.
Well, you still got guys like Chance Langdon who come up there and stuff. He's like a Boston legend, right?
Oh, yeah. He'll come by. Chance will come by, once a month or so and do 10, 20. But that's the thing, when anyone comes in, any big name comes in, they're doing 10-minute sets, just like everybody else.
Guess right.
Again, because I can't really afford to pay any of those guys what they're worth.
Yeah, 45-minute to an hour set, right.
Yeah, if I'm only getting the door and I'm charging $10 a piece, that's the other thing. I try to keep the price really low so that those new young people who are into comedy can afford it.
The college students don't have a lot of money to begin with, right.
Yeah, if I got an audience of 20 people paying $10 each, I can't afford it.
So, I mean, the veteran comics get that. If you say that to a veteran comic, they're going to understand, all right, Rick, I get what you're saying. But these young kids where they think they're worth headliner money just starting out at open mics, so what do you tell them?
You know what I tell them is when you bring in that much, you can get that much.
Right.
Because at the level we're at, how good you are it just makes the show better. It doesn't really matter. Let's say it doesn't really matter to me whether I book a middle or a headliner. No one in the room is going to leave saying, "Oh, I didn't like that." So you've got to be either so much better that everyone leaves going, "Wow, that was great. I want to come back," or people have to know you and say, "I'm going to that show because that guy is here."
Right, that's what I tell them. You put your name on the billboard and people are buying tickets, you deserve to get paid. If they're not buying tickets, maybe you're not as hot a comic as you think you are,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you need me, then, there's no reason for me to pay you, extra money.
Right.
Just because even if you are better, it doesn't do anything for me to give you more money. Now, if people are coming to see you because it's you, which is what started happening with Dane Cook or Anthony Clark, all of a sudden you saw, hey, if I book him, I'm going to get 20 extra people in the audience.
That's extra
now
money, right?
I'm going to pay him some money. Bob Marley up in Maine, he has such a fan base that the old Comedy Connection eventually gave him a piece of the club.
He's earned it,
right? If you play here exclusively, we'll cut you an ownership stake. They did that with Anthony Clark at the Connection.
Well, a lot of the young comics, they think they're the next Bill Burr, but they're actually not. And it's tough to convince them of that, I find. It's like,
Yeah. But you know what? You can let those people know. I started out with Bill Burr. We all started out, Burr, CK. We started out with all those guys. They weren't that at the beginning.
Right.
There were times, Louis would open for me or David Cross or somebody. They were just like everybody else saying, "Hey, I'm good. How come I'm not getting headliner money?" Because you're getting the stage time to become a headliner, but nobody's paying extra money, to see you.
Nobody wants to earn it. Nobody wants to work for it. They think they're entitled nowadays. I'm entitled. It's please and thank you has become you owe me and I'm entitled nowadays. I've found.
Yeah. The question is, what are you bringing to the table? What are you doing to deserve that extra money?
Right. Put the question back on that.
You think you owe it? You think I should pay you an extra $50? Okay, where's that 50 coming from?
Yeah. What are you doing to earn that extra 50, right?
Yeah.
All right,
because
so
the way we have our show structured is coming out of my pocket.
Yeah. I mean, you can only pay so much. You only make so much. You can't give out more than you make, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, we set around an hour for the podcast, and we're approaching that. So we've talked about how you started out in comedy. We talked about your club, you moved the state with COVID, what you done.
Yep.
I guess the only thing left is where are you going? Is there anything left on your bucket list in comedy you want to accomplish before your days are up in the comedy scene, or what's in the future for you in the comedy studio?
The COVID, I think, for me and everybody has been a really great, reset. All of a sudden I'm sitting here and I've got to make phone calls to try and get enough money to stay afloat and, talk to city owners and stuff. And I've been reaching out and talking to a lot of the comics who started out, who are friends.
Right.
People, Emmy Award winners, people who have their own shows, all this sort of stuff has been really great. Just, reaching out and touching. Boy, I would really like to, get the little comedy club back up. So I've got that high school. People come in, they learn their craft, they move on, and then when they got a really good job and a nice family, they come back and say hi to the old teacher.
Just get back to doing what you're doing at this point, right?
Yeah. I love. There's nothing like the feeling of a really good comic in a small room on a specific night. It only happens once, and
you're there to witness the magic, right?
Yeah.
Right.
When you have a Bill Burr, when Bill Burr played My Place, or Patrice O'Neill, you've got a full house and somebody nobody's ever heard of who is just Dice Clay. And I was in Buffalo. I opened for Dice the very first time he did the whole show as Dice.
Really?
Until that point, he had been doing Andrew Silverstein and his impressions.
Right. Dice was a character he did,
out on
right?
the road, and Buffalo happened to be the first place he played, and he was nervous as all hell. I go in the dressing room, he's like, yeah, whatever you want. And then he comes into my dressing room and says, look, I'm really sorry. I've never done Dice from beginning to end.
Right.
I don't know if people are going to buy it. And I said, I'll do an extra 5 minutes so that you can cut your time short if you need to. And he's like, oh, thanks, that'd be really nice. Right. And then he went out and did 4 hours or something. Something crazy.
Once they accepted him, it was easy, right?
And you knew he had something special.
Right.
But you see guys like that in a small room. Nobody knows who he is.
Yeah.
But you see him on that night and you go like, oh yeah, he's going to be huge.
You get to witness the journey, right?
Yeah, that's why we do it. When you see, it's a Chinese restaurant in Hadley, Mass, and Bill Burr, before he's broken, comes in and rips the place apart. That's what it's about.
That's something to witness right there. All right. Well, congratulations on all your success with the Comedy Studio. I wish you many more years of success, and I thank you very much for being on Funny Like Clown Podcast. Rick, take care.
Hey, thanks so much. Hope to be one of your profiles someday.
All right, let's hope so someday. All right, good luck to you, Rick.
All right, thanks so much, Dennis.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Rick Jenkins from the highly successful Boston area comedy club, the Comedy Studio. You got to check them out, man. Some of the young college kids, the stars of tomorrow, are coming through his club, and you want to check those out. Hey, give back. This guy, 21 years, he's been giving back to comedy. He's been giving them a stage, and he's brought you the comedy that you see today. And hey, we wish him many more years of success. What a great job he's done up there for just the art of comedy, and that's what it is. It's an art form, and he gives people a place, as he said, to express their art. And once you give people a place to express their art, they go on to do big things, and you get satisfaction from knowing, you gave them a place to work out that to become the big stars that they are. So, hey, keep laughing. Tell somebody a joke at work this week. You're going to tell somebody that joke at work this week, then they're going to tell somebody else, and it's like a big chain reaction. You keep laughter going, and laughter is the best medicine. We'll see you until next week. Keep laughing, folks. Good night.